Hello and welcome to the 2022 seminar week of Rapool Baltic. My name is Kröger. I'm working in the international development for new oilseed varieties of Rapool, and I'm proud to be here and to present you today my speech about Verticillium, a hidden threat not just before harvest, of course in oilseed rape. And now I would like to come to the agenda, what I would like to show you within the next minutes. First of all, I would like to start with the life cycle of Verticillium longisporum. Then I would like to give you some facts of this disease, how it happens and what comes over the whole season. Why is Verticillium so important lately in the season is a very important topic. Which agronomic opportunities are possible to act against Verticillium is something, of course, you need to know. And then I would like to show you some solutions that are in our pipeline from Rapool to tackle this topic, and I would like to finish with a small summary about Verticillium. Now, coming to the life cycle of Verticillium, you could think Verticillium is a disease that steps into our oilseed rape just short before harvest, but that is not the case, unfortunately. Verticillium, as you can see here, starts to infect our oilseed rape already in autumn. So we have the microsclerotia in our soils. They can stay alive in the soil up to 8 years already. And then they come already with soil temperatures of 12 degrees in autumn into our oilseed rape via a penetration of the root. That's why we have then a long term to develop in the plant over the whole season, but the symptoms we see only in late spring and early summer. That's why this disease is so hard to tackle, because you cannot feel it, you cannot see when it is in the plant. It also doesn't affect the plant over the whole life cycle, but then finally it comes and it can make a lot of damage. Now here are some very important facts about this disease, Verticillium longisporum. What is in fact not a wilt, but a stem striping. And in former times it was often called Verticillium wilt. But in fact it doesn't really make any wilt symptoms, as you could imagine for drought, for example. But really it is a stem striping, and it hurts the plant a lot at the last cycle of its development. What is in case very important, especially for the formation of the seeds. So we get the attacks from 10 to 12 degrees soil temperature, and that's of course even in autumn already. So when the soil in summer is still quite warm, we have sown the oilseed rape, we have a good spring development, we also have good conditions for Verticillium longisporum. At the moment we know 3 races so far. Of course there's always a development of different races ongoing, but what we know is at the moment that there are 3 pathotypes. It penetrates our oilseed rape with the root hairs, so it comes really from the soil and takes then a long time just staying in the root of our plant. So at first, of course, the vigorous and the robust root that is not affected or attacked by any other problem is the main thing we could do against Verticillium at the start. Early sowing dates and also cabbage stem flea beetle or the root fly attacks of oilseed rape are another problem that helped the Verticillium longisporum to attack our oilseed rape. A complete colonization in the plant will start with the beginning then of the flowering period. So really depending on the temperature that we have from March on. So really then from the spring on. You can see it here at the right graph. These are the degree days from the 1st March, and you can clearly see when we have reached 1,500 or 2,000 degree days in summer. This is when the attack of Verticillium and the development in the plant really starts. And then we can also see the first symptoms of this disease. Verticillium can lead to very much yield depressions. When we have around 60% infected plants only, and sometimes we have a lot more than 60% infected plants, the yield depression can be already up to 20%. Of course, with the high prices at the moment, this can cause very serious monetary damage for all of us. So stopping the spreading of Verticillium in the plant could be a potential target also for a resistance, or at least minimum a tolerance of the varieties. What is found out already is that salicylic acid, which is very important for the lignin creation in the plant, seems to be quite crucial for the variety resistance in the plant. We are not so far of talking of a variety resistance because it's very hard at the moment also for breeding, as resistance is dependent on more than one genes, what makes it really hard for us to breed, but of course it's a very important topic also for us. So coming to the distribution and the origin of Verticillium longisporum, you can see it is quite a young disease for oilseed rape finally. So also like for other cabbages, it was first found in 1957 in the UK for Brussels sprouts. Then the first oilseed rape was affected, or at least was presented, by the Swedish in the 1970s. In Canada, where we have the very big oilseed areas of summer oilseed rape, this disease is only in the last 10-15 years present. So quite a young disease still for the oilseed rape. But nevertheless, it's so young. The problem is it's very hard for us to attack, and the impact of this disease is quite high. So I found some data here from Germany where there's quite a high impact and high infestations of this disease, with 80% even in the main growing areas of oilseed rape, which are in Germany in the northeastern parts. And of course here we can see already that, like other diseases also, Verticillium is very much dependent also on the crop rotation. But that's another point I will come to later. So coming to the symptoms of this disease, it is easiest to see the disease at the flowering stage of oilseed rape or shortly behind, when it really increases the effect in the plants. The one thing you can see is this: some leaves are turning yellow only at 1/2. And that is the reason why it is like this is that the Verticillium develops through the xylem of the plant. So there where we also have the water flow in the plant. And that's also the reason why you can see the stem striping. And that's really the major characteristic of Verticillium. So you can see it here first. You have a pale stem striping at the plant, really along the stem on one side of the stem, which later then turns more gray and finally leads then to a total browning of the whole stem of the plant. So you could also imagine that it's just maybe early ripening. So what could be also from drought or maybe even from FOMA the case. So that's why it's really hard for us, like for you, to identify this disease, because often at harvest many diseases and many different fungi come together as a normal ripening process. Here are some further pictures also for you to differentiate this disease. And as you can see on the left picture, with a green stem and then this brown stripe on the stem, and this is really very typical for the disease. And I would say this is also the easiest way to see it. Later on, we find on the stem these very small microsclerotia. So we know, for example, from sclerotinia, quite big sclerotia. We know these small black pycnidia from FOMA, and this is something very special also. The problem is, I think, these microsclerotia are smaller than the pycnidia for FOMA. So you see more a grayish layer on the outer stem instead of really seeing the single microsclerotia. I think it's really hard to detect. Finally, this field could be also a field just being ripe, but if you open then the different stems, you can see there is no white tissue inside the stems. There's some black layer, and this is coming from the microsclerotia. Yeah, here you can see also a differentiation between Verticillium and FOMA. So for FOMA, I think it's more clear. You can really see single small black dots, and these are then the pycnidia from FOMA. What is also quite typical for Verticillium, and what you could try, when you pull out a plant from the soil, then it is very easy because the attack starts from the root. So the root is already quite weak, and it's very easy for you to pull out the plant. And then the root is already quite black, also coming from these microsclerotia and having the fungus inside over the whole year. So also looking at black roots can be something really as a typical symptom for Verticillium. Another important topic why this disease has been grown over the last years is also soil hygiene and growing of cover crops. So mixtures of cover crops got very popular over the last years. They have very high functions for the soil, of course, but also in these mixtures are some types and some plants that also carry Verticillium disease. Besides oilseed rape, all the brassicas carry Verticillium wilt, but also like Phacelia, a very important cover crop, can be attacked by Verticillium. And you can see it here. There were made also glasshouse experiments where 100% of the plants were attacked with Verticillium for mustard, oil radish, turnip, rape, and also for Facelia, 72% of the plants were attacked. Also in the fields, there have been already found plants of Facelia and also of oil radish with Verticillium wilt inside. So this is something we need to look at when growing cover crops in an oilseed rape rotation, that we also need to look at the Verticillium topic. So why is Verticillium in general so important lately over the last years? We have tighter crop rotations, and that's also something we need to look at, especially now. Of course, there is a tendency now to look just at the economic crop rotation with the very high prices we get at the moment for oilseed rape. But being tighter in a crop rotation leads to diverse problems, starting with clubroot, but of course also Verticillium is one of the problems that get increased with higher crop rotations. We grow cover crops, as I said already, and here we need to look what is inside these mixtures and minimize at least the share of especially brassicas and also of Facelia. There are enough other species that could be used in such a mixture. Early sowings, a general topic I would say also for other diseases, is also something we can tackle here. So come later with the sowing also. Also this helps to minimize the threat of Verticillium. As you can imagine, it takes a long time and we need these degree days of warm temperature also for the disease to develop in the plant. The later we come, the lower are the temperature degree days, and all this helps our oilseed rape. Also, higher pressure of insects, especially cabbage stem flea beetle and the root fly, is very bad for the soil and very bad for this disease to attack the plant. So what we need to look at carefully is also a good insecticide treatment at the start, also already as a treatment, so like Lumiposa, for example, or Buteo Start, what can be offered here. And then we need to look at that we really, you look at the yellow traps, what is inside, and is it necessary also to come with an insecticide already in autumn. At the moment, we also have warmer autumns already, what is quite good for the growing period, for the development of oilseed rape in autumn. On the other hand, of course, with the growing degree days, it also helps Verticillium to develop in the plant. And then the other thing are favorable weather conditions also during flowering time for Verticillium, and also here a warmer spring and also a warmer early summer helps for this disease to develop in the plant and to come also earlier than in the last 10 or 15 years. So we had Verticillium before, but when it comes late, it doesn't damage our plant. It's no matter. It just helps maybe to ripen our plants and to mature. But if it comes too early, we can have this very big damage. So what are the agronomical opportunities? What can we do really against this topic? Of course, first of all, extension of the crop rotation. So we really need to look, and we should look, that we are not coming with more than 25% of oilseed rape in our crop rotation. As I said, microsclerotia can live more than 8 years in the fields, in the soil, and they then germinate when there's root extraction from oilseed rape. So I would say not more than every 4th year with oilseed rape. Of course, this helps us also for all the other diseases. For cover crops, I said already, use mixtures without the plants that can be also affected by Verticillium. Later sowing dates are very important also for Verticillium. Also plowing could help, for example, that the microsclerotia are more diverse in the soil, are more also decreased to lower soil areas and have a lower potential to germinate with the roots. Insect pressure is very important. A damaged root is easier to tackle also for this disease. And then, of course, what is our topic are varieties and variety resistances or tolerances, at least for Verticillium. And that's my next topic. What additionally helps also at these times with very high nutrient prices is a very good nutrient status of the plant. Because you can imagine when you have already affected the water flow and have then also some potential problems with the nutrient flow in the plant, it always helps when the plant minimizes the stress around. So also, for example, a good FOMA resistance, also a turnip yellow virus resistance that already stops all these side problems that we could have over the whole year in oilseed rape are very important to tackle against Verticillium, because then the plant can also help itself against this disease, as we have no other chemical or any other mechanisms at the moment. Now what is Rapool doing about Verticillium? And first of all, it's very important to check it. And we do this with trialing, of course. We are in the fields over whole Europe, and especially we are in the fields where we have regularly Verticillium. I told you already that Sweden was the first country to report Verticillium in oilseed rape, and this is also where we constantly find very high shares of Verticillium in our trials. And that's, of course, the places where we go with our varieties to test them against Verticillium. And you can see we have quite a nice spread also here for our oilseed rape in the disease. Every year we are testing, and here, for example, you can see the scores for the year 2021. You can see the scores average between 2 for a quite low disease, and for the high infections we have a score of more than 4.5. And 4.5 from 9 is already a quite high intensity of the disease. And I made here 3 groups. So we have a green group, which are the varieties that are quite good, quite tolerant against Verticillium. Then there are some in between, and there are some red, and some 2 candidates here are quite bad here against Verticillium. So maybe not the correct varieties, especially for Sweden and for the countries, or at least for the locations, with a quite high risk to be tackled by Verticillium. Also, I can show you some data related to the yield and the infection status against Verticillium. And of course, this is very interesting because here we have a quite high correlation of 44% that can explain here the yield depression, or the higher yield at least, also then for the very good varieties in relation to the Verticillium topic. So the best varieties here with the highest yields of, at this location, above 7 tons of oilseed rape, what is of course a really high yield, have also the lowest score of Verticillium, and also have so the best tolerance against the disease. And this is something we need to look at, and we are looking at very carefully, although, as I said already, it's really hard also for us and for all the people working in the fields of really differentiating at the end of the season, is it Verticillium, is it just ripening, is it FOMA, or is it maybe also a combination of all these factors. But clearly we have tolerances against the disease, and we are using them, so ask our colleagues, ask us about the disease, and we can give you answers also about this topic. So, finally, to summarize my little speech about the Verticillium longisporum in oilseed rape. First of all, it's a stem striping, and this is very characteristic. It is not a wilt, although it was called a wilt before. It's not having symptoms like you have in drought. We have some effects of dry down of oilseed rape, what are of course bad when it comes very early. Then we have very high yield depressions for this disease in oilseed rape. But for sometimes even it helps us also, this disease, when we have varieties that are quite late, that have very good stem health, and then also this disease, when it comes later, helps us to mature the varieties. At the moment, there's no fungicidal control of this disease, what makes it quite hard to tackle, so we have really to look at agronomic mechanisms also to help us here in the fields. We have to minimize all other stress factors in the plant, as I said. We have to look also for all other resistances available in the plant. Also, flowering treatment, for example, could help to stop already sclerotinia, to not have 2 problems on top. And in general, also this provokes a greening of the plant. Yield effects are not, as always, are not easy to detect. And especially to measure, but when you have Verticillium, when you have a high share of Verticillium, when you see these symptoms already quite early in the field, then the yield depression can be quite high with 20% or even more. Variety tolerances are possible. I showed you, we have them in our portfolio. I think we are quite good in our pipeline at the moment with stem health, and especially also with tolerances against Verticillium. So I think Rapool is your best partner here at the moment for this topic. Please contact us, come in touch with us, and have a look at our varieties in the field days that will come in the early spring and next summer. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I could present you an interesting and nice speech, and please get in contact with us, our colleagues. We like very much to help you also for this topic.